of heavy thunderstorms moved through the metro area. This time there was damage on the western edge near Long Lake. Dave Nimmer was there and can tell us more about the damage there. What actually hit them?
Well, what hit them were either straight-line winds or a tornado, depending upon to whom you talked, Annie. There were some people who heard a whistle or a roar, a freight train-like roar, which would indicate a tornado. And there was stuff strewn all over, which would also indicate a tornado. Now, the good news, kiddo, was that there were no injuries, and the bad news was that there were 30 to 35 houses damaged, and the damage estimate was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000.
Anybody homeless? Look, we're seeing some of the pictures
now.
No,
no one was homeless. When we went door to door, people were somewhat relieved. Number one, that there were no injuries. Number two, most of the people we talked to were covered by insurance, including one lucky son of a gun who had just updated his homeowner's policy. Oh. And three, that they could all use their homes. Even places where the roofs were partially torn off were still livable. So people were in the midst of cleaning up the glass and debris. One woman had all of the insulation literally sucked out of her attic, and it was in her living room. Her dining room was filled with shattered glass, but she said, "I'm going to sleep here tonight," and that's what most of them are going to do.
Did the people out there feel as if they had ample warning?
They did. They did. They didn't feel that they could get any warning from any kind of a siren, because you could see the winds coming from the distance, or you could see the dark clouds, and then you could hear the freight train light roar, and all of a sudden there it was. And then they said it was quiet.
More on this tonight
at 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much. The National Guard has been called out to patrol the ravaged St. Anthony, New Brighton area. Don Shelby on the scene with more on the story. Don?
Well, the way we understand it, and of course we're receiving this information directly from Pat Kessler, who has been covering the governor's actions here. It was at about 10 o'clock last night that authorities from St. Anthony and the Apache Plaza made phone calls into the governor's office to ask for assistance from the National Guard because of the number of homes that were harmed and because of some limited looting that was going on early after the damage happened here at the Apache Plaza. At about 11 o'clock, Governor Perpich called upon the National Guard, and he arrived himself here to survey the damage. It was just at about 2:30 that the troops were mobilized, and their military police vans and jeeps were set on patrol. In all, there are more than 100, about 101, exactly, 101 National Guard troops here in the St. Anthony residential neighborhood, as well as around the command post at Apache Plaza. Now, there is also another piece of information out of the governor's office, which is worth imparting. According to Pat Kessler, the governor's office is saying those people who are calling for federal disaster assistance and state disaster assistance, don't hold your breath, because that's a very difficult process at this point. But that does not mean that there will not be some kind of assistance. It is coincidental that in the passage of the big tax bill that just went through the state legislature, there was a provision in it that gave tax relief to people who had homes harmed. Now, there are some provisions. That means an assessment, first of all, has to be called for and then made. And on top of that, the second thing that has to be done is that at least 25 homes have to be harmed to the extent that they have suffered $5,000 damage or more. Now, that will not mean that you'll get any disaster funds, but if such a program is in effect in St. Anthony, the homeowners who have suffered this kind of damage can get tax relief to the extent they may not have to pay any property taxes at all in the coming year. But that is in the future for those people who have to look into the state tax law, which was passed just this past week. There was one fatality in the metropolitan area as a result of this storm, and it happened here in the St. Anthony area. 88-year-old Frances Schrag died when part of her home collapsed on her. She was taken to the Hennepin County Medical Center. She died there at 10:40 p.m. Altogether, 44 other people were taken to metro area hospitals. Only 7 of them remain at those hospitals. All of those 7 are now in satisfactory condition. I'll take it back to you, Ed.
There was another storm-related death. Ernest Brovald of Clarkfield, Minnesota, died about this time yesterday when he was struck in the chest by the top of a dead tree which had been blown off during high winds. Brovald died instantly. He was 67 years old. Elsewhere around the state, tornadoes hit 2 farms just north of St. Bonifacius, causing an estimated $200,000 worth of damage. 3 families from Hoffman lost their farm homes. 16 other families are reporting farm damage. 4 of the 5 hangars at the Staples Airport were damaged extensively. A grain drying operation in Grand Meadow sustained damages estimated at $203,000. When we come back...